Good morning. Thank you for having me. I hope you'll think of me next time David Fickler's in trial. I have the great honor of introducing my friend, man from the fighting city of New York, weighing in at 100 pounds. Ladies and gentlemen, Gregory Crosby.
Do we know each other?
All too well.
Geoff.
Yes.
Am I supposed to do? Oh,
Touch my garment. Five.
Found poem lost. Thank you. All women have been corrupted by the bikini, saith the internet. But the bikini was corrupted first by a hydrogen bomb named Castle Bravo. Applause. I often think of the expression on John Calvin's face when he died and fell toward the light, and then discovered for himself what predestination truly is. A human being is an animal that always thinks it's both much better and much worse than it really is. You might describe this as humanity's original sin. There are no correct interpretations, only those that are plausible and persuasive, or implausible, unpersuasive, or alas, implausible and entirely persuasive. Of course, if God is everywhere, then God is nowhere as well. If everything's a swimming costume, nothing goes naked. Sweet corruption, give me bikini body before I die.
I'm not going to ask you this after every poem, the whole, where did that come from? But where did that come from?
Fortunately, at the bottom of Walking Away from Explosions in Slow Motion, published by the Operating System, only $10 today at the Las Vegas Book Festival, there is a section of notes in the back. And let's look up the note that I wrote for Found Poem Lost. Found Poem Lost. I cannot recall where I came across the first line of this poem. Google has repeatedly failed to turn it up, which is perhaps as it should be. So yeah, I came across that line about bikinis being, and I couldn't find it. It was in some story I was reading. And it just, I thought, oh, there's a poem somewhere in that.
You were, back in the day. Please.
Sounds like we used to do porn or something back in the day.
I greatly admired your writing from the beginning.
Oh.
And I absolutely love it now.
Yes.
What changed, man? After you went to New York,
It got better.
You did get better. You got really effing good. Do you attribute that to New York, to age, or just to...
Well, I did get a master in fine arts and poetry. Not that that did anything at all.
But being around New York poets, did that kind of toughen you up, rolling with those punches?
No. It's just, what it really is, just time. It turns out if you write a lot over a long period of time, you get better at it. If you had any talent to begin with, of course, but as we know, talent is cheap.
Yes, of course, that happens.
It's true. There's many people with talent, but it's the people who just keep doing it who eventually turn that talent into something.
Are you happier?
Or it's luck.
Oh, God, here we go again.
Yeah.
Are you happier with your work now?
Yes. I've never shown my brilliant girlfriend any of the poems I wrote during the 1990s.
I've got some for you later when we look at the dog. I think it's time we rolled bones.
Nice. Oh. Sorry, I thought he was making an illusion.
They may not be able to identify
Six.
the way we can identify.
Wing prayer. The pilot said, "We're beginning our descent." And I thought, yes, that's right, wheels down, waiting for the jolt that brings the monster back to life. Outside it's white, down through the clouds, the all of it hidden. I'm beginning my descent, unable to remember how I came to be in flight. I'm going to ground. I'm coming down. Soon we'll all be touching down. You know, don't you, what they made the monster from? How I may spend this, having browsed Sky Mall, read my thriller, drank. Attendants prepare for landing. Angels sing me to my best. The roar is all I hear, surrounded by strangers, by tears. Hello, the appropriate response after a poem is to snap your fingers. Didn't everyone get the memo?
Your work is touched by the popular culture.
Well, that sounds terrible.
I like that.
It's like you
touched in inappropriate places.
I know, it's
by
like
popular culture.
You bring the poem out and you go, where did the culture touch you? Was it here? Was it here? Was it a bad touch? Yes, it is touched by popular culture because apparently I live in the United States of America here in the darkest timeline of 2018. So yes, that's true.
In a way, have you more strongly embraced your geekery in the fullness of your life?
That would imply I ever let it go. So yeah, no, the geekery is the nerd in me is always just below the surface, where it should remain. So I never have to show up to Comic Con and do cosplay. So I'm already doing cosplay right now. So. All right, who was that? Was that Fit? Was that Laura? Bravo, Laura. That was very good. Yeah, crossplay. Yeah. So yes, you know, I've got a few friends. Well, one friend who insisted never to write anything, have any kind of mention of technology or electronic media or the spectacle in which we find ourselves, because she felt it grounded the poem too much. And of course, there are people who that's all they write about. So I try to strike some kind of balance between, you know, throwing a phrase like YOLO into a poem, which isn't even a thing anymore. You know, wouldn't YOLO FOMO be a great stripper name? YOLO FOMO. And things that require you to Google it because it's some obscure, ridiculous historical literary illusion. Try to walk that very. It's not really a fine line. It's more of a superpower between those two extremes. So.
Did you ever try to take your advice on that? Did you ever try to go, you know, far outside of yourself and write something that didn't have Sky Mall in it?
Yes, I still do that all the time. And you know, that poem's already, I mean, Sky Mall doesn't exist anymore. It's very sad to be on an airplane and not be able to flip through Sky Mall and look at all the things that you will never buy. It made one feel superior to capitalism for a brief moment before the plane took off. But yeah, I write all kinds of odd things, which you will discover when you purchase a copy of Walking Away from Explosions in Slow Motion, available for $10 today at the festival. $10 and a kiss, but not necessarily for me.
I think it's time we roll for 7.
Echo says, someone stands on the beach in Santa Monica. She dips an empty glass vial into the sea. She carries it away to a waiting car. Then she drives across the country, and that's your life. Everything you are, the water in that vial. And when she arrives in Coney Island, she walks to the edge of the surf, and she opens the vial and pours you out into the Atlantic, and that's death. And there you are, water into water, salt into salt, ocean to ocean, and who could ever find you again in all those waves? You think there's still someone in the water who could say, I've never seen the ocean? Just then, Ocean, by the Velvet Underground, came up on shuffle. There was a tremendous pause before our laughter rolled over her, over the fire pit's distortion, down the sand and into the dark sound of the sea, whose voice we could never not hear and never see.
ever moderated a panel?
Yes, I moderated 2 panels at the Las Vegas Book Festival in 2015.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's surprisingly difficult.
No, just say whatever pops into your head. I'm game.
No, it's actually surprisingly difficult. And one thing I always forget to do at the end is to throw it open to questions. So what I'm going to do now is just pick someone and make them ask a question. Right now, the first question that comes into their head, and that person is going to be Dr. Todd Jones. What's your question?
Well, what is it about being older that makes it better? Is it having done it a bunch of times, or is it just being older?
I think, someone once said that all poems are, in a sense, elegies. And, as you get older, your melancholy increases. Also a sense of sort of existential resignation and fatalism, which is great for poetry, apparently. No, it just comes from writing a lot of poems and focusing on that. I used to write other things, some of them for a living, and I really stopped doing that when I moved to New York to go to grad school and to focus on the poetry. So I just wrote a lot of poetry, and of course I read a lot of poetry, and so it's just all part of that process as you move forward. And plus, just you're supposed to get better. Unless you're just one of those, annoying poets who were like a brilliant genius when they were 19 and changed the world, and then everything they wrote after that, was terrible. But that was not my trajectory, fortunately.
Do you have an idea roughly how many poems you've written?
Yes, but I shan't tell you.
Tell me later.
A lot.
Josh Abbey, I know you have a question. You always have a question.
Just wondering if the set of black
yes, we planned all this. Months in the planning. Many emails to Bobby Ann Howell saying, what's the background? What is the damn background of the poetry? Rather than explain the title, I'll read the title poem. Oh, basically the exact same pitch.
12.
You gotta make your own luck. Walking away from explosions in slow motion. It's all you can do. The world is always behind you, the catastrophe of time, the exchange of air and fire, the wave of force raising the hair on the back of your neck, a rivulet of sweat unseen by all the eyes on your unseen gaze, the blank face that says, I'm walking away, I'm getting away with something. All those opportunities to find your body framed by boiling galaxies of flame, untouched by shrapnel, not above it all, but out in front of it, like the future itself, walking away, fucking badass. Fuck no, you don't look back. You can't look back. A cinder in your eye might ruin the shot. A world might suddenly taste of salt. That wasn't really an explanation. Sorry, Josh.
Let's talk about.
Oh, someone actually raised their hand over here. That's Liz. Hi, Liz. Yes. Yes. I'm repeating the question for the camera. The question was, Crosby, why are you such a downer? Everything's going to be okay. Would you freaking relax? Oh my God, what a drag. Oh, the world's going to collapse before the end of the 21st century. I'm just going to fall back on, yeah, is there a place for hope? Yeah, as long as there's life and consciousness, there's hope. There's always a place for hope. But sometimes the hope is very much tinged with acknowledgement that, things probably will always turn out worse than you expect, but never as terrible as you might imagine. You know? So yeah, there's always a place for hope. And of course, that's always in the poems about love. In fact, this poem is entitled, "The Photo That My Girlfriend Took of One of Her Riding Students Hugging a Horse and Then Emailed to Me." It wrecks me. It ruins me. Something in me shatters and escapes into the air, a broken ampoule filled with the opposite of poison. Her eyes closed, her hand on his nose, the nostril bigger than her thumb, her face bulked and comforted by her huge white helmet, the helmet tipped back a little, pressed against the horse's face, blue halter framing the slope of brown and white, the steel ring gleaming in the light, and her lips against the muzzle in not quite a kiss, chin out, almost in defiance, nuzzling the hot breath of evidence, the proof of life as other, truly other. Eyes closed. The horse's eyes high and away outside the frame, her serene little face. The wordless, worthless prayer given worth because wordless, because it is and isn't prayer. Something in me hopes she never opens her eyes, her hand never falls away from the snort and sigh of the world as it breathes, just breathes, both ready and at rest. Is this kitsch? I don't care. Kitsch is what one responds to helplessly. How the world catches us unaware, how we are released.
Yeah, let's go back to talking about hopelessness.
Oh no, I have a question. Oh dear. Try to do something else if you absolutely possibly can.
I'm going to veto that one. Do over.
Oh, I'm getting beat. I'm the poet with the book. I'm getting beat.
No, I'm the moderator. I outrank you.
It's very simple. Everyone should write poetry, but not everyone necessarily needs to be a poet. It really is a vocation, and you have to take it kind of seriously. And the only advice that I can give is to be okay with the fact that the world at large, most people are never going to really acknowledge you or acknowledge poetry or like poetry. To be ambitious for the work that you write, the things you create, and not ambitious just for yourself or your own ego. And to read a lot of different poems by a lot of different poets in translation from different time periods, and write as much as you humanly can and try anything and everything until you find your own distinct voice coming out through what you're writing, and then you're home. And then you can either, become someone who does this, who publishes their poem and poems and put them out in the world, or you can just write it for yourself. Either way, though, just write it. I once said I was going to give up poetry to a poet who read here years ago, a poet named Richard Silberberg, and at the end I was like, I'm thinking of giving up poetry because I wanted to write prose, I wanted to write fiction, and at the end he signed his book to me, and the inscription was, "Don't give it up, man, it's too sweet." And so I was like, oh, okay. And so I didn't give it up. And so yeah, it's just read as much as possible, as wide as possible, write as much as possible, and just be there in the act of writing and with the poetry itself. And don't get hung up about the world or po-biz, as we like to call it, because it might break your heart. But the poem will never break your heart. The poetry itself will never break your heart. It's all that stuff that goes with that word. Is that a better answer, Geoff?
That's a beautiful answer. Was there a ammo moment where you realized you were committed to poetry, or was it something you looked back and went, I guess I've been here all along?
Yeah, it was when 10 years went by and I had like a half dozen fragments of short stories and like a stack of poetry, and I said, well, I guess I should really be focusing on poetry because that's what comes out 9 out of 10 times when I sit down to write. Because it's easy. No one ever tells you poetry's easy. Oh, it's so easy. It's the easiest thing in the world. You just sit and write a sonnet, and then you hit line 13, you're like, I'm almost done. And then you hit line 14, and you're done. Oh, it's so great. And then you can go out and play. It's great.
Read a fucking 11.
the title of this poem, and I don't know where this came from. This might be Josh Ellison's fault, this title of this poem. Even the boss monsters of the Dark Enlightenment are weak bitches. Truth be told, she said, this is my first rodeo. And then she broke apart into pieces of honeycomb, which caught the last light as they fell across your path, and you could taste each fivefold sweetness, even though you'd cut out your own tongue in anticipation of this moment. You carry it. You carry it on your back the way a hermit crab crawls into a shell called the world and drags it across a beach where every grain of sand is counted and forgotten. Every sliver you ever dug out of a finger was a piece of the true cross. Every stone passed was an infinity gem, another wish flushed away. All you ever paid attention to was the pain, how many died and will die and cannot die to put that sweetness in your mouth, sticking to the roof of your palate above the empty room of your voice. How many blind fish have you caught in your dark net? How will you ever know if it was worth it, these crimes you committed in the name of freedom? Freedom is a hive where every drone knows his name and nothing else. In the dark, the sweetness waits. It's rotten. It's perfect. It's still the word you will never say. No idea what that is.
How much Las Vegasness do you still have in you? How does it influence your work?
Well, you can take the boy out of Vegas. That was really weak. Yeah, of course, I'll always be marked and shaped by Las Vegas. I grew up here. I think Vegas gives you, in both the positive and the negative senses, an understanding of the notion of grace.
Unpack that for me.
So much of our lives is actually ruled. We don't like to think of this, particularly as Americans who buy into the notion of self-made, rugged individualism. But so much of our lives are based completely on luck, on the randomness, chaotic nature of the universe. Someone told me when I moved to New York that, oh, you have to be willing to be lucky. In other words, you have to be open to luck, to opportunity. And you'd be surprised by how many people are not. And I think that I have a heightened sense of both the random nature of the universe, but also the fact that the randomness reveals itself sometimes, if you're lucky, if you put yourself in the right place at the right time, to a certain notion of grace, a certain sense that the pattern is unfolding as it should be, or that you have found meaning within that pattern for yourself, even if it's just you deciding what that meaning is. I'm sorry, that was a lot of abstract. I missed the 99-cent breakfast. That's really what I want to say about Las Vegas. And the free parking, and just, I'm just sort of slightly appalled. And every movie theater I went to in my youth is gone. It's just all very sad. Sorry.
Speaking of randomness, can I read one? And in a way that you would probably despise? Like, that's not all how I wrote it?
Do you want me to do it at random for you to read it?
Yeah.
We're telling Mr. Geoff Carter when I attempt to read a poem.
Appropriate. Are your headaches just a dead twin inside your brain? All those times saying it's not a tumor in an Austrian accent, while something drove a nail into the wall behind your eyes shut tight. All those times in a darkened room listening to the throb and sob of that little voice. Hair, bone, teeth, curls, a weak chin, braces. The day came when you actually needed a hole in your head, and they found her, tiny teratoma, which sounds like a girl you knew in high school. Hi, I'm Teratoma. Are you signing up for Key Club? I just know we're going to be besties. But nobody's best friends forever, not even those you consumed in the womb. That little voice always whispering, Wonder Twin powers activate. Form of a question unasked. Shape of an absence. Hair, bone, teeth. At least there wasn't an eye, you shudder and sigh, while somewhere deep in the cells there's a lid twitching. In endless sleep, hopelessly dreaming. A dream. Tapping it out like a sailor trapped in a submarine. Hair, bone, teeth. Hair, bone, teeth. Hair, bone, teeth. Oh, the piece is wonderful, but I fucked it up.
No, you sounded great. Here's the note for that poem. It's right next to a poem called China Can't Stop People from Hiring Funeral Strippers. And the note for both of those poems is, both titles were ripped from yesterday's headlines. Which is true. There was a woman who had a teratoma removed from her brain, and it turned out it was a twin that she consumed in the womb, and it had hair and bones and teeth, and they took it out of her. So that's what inspired that poem. I like the look on Nick's face right now as I described that. That was like a jaw drop right there. Thank you, sir.
Hey, let's jump back to hopelessness really quick. I feel like we got derailed talking about hope, but I want to get back to how fucked everything is.
Okay.
One thing people say to comics during bad times is, oh, this is giving you so much material. Do you feel like this is giving you so much material?
No, I was a sad sack before the election, so I would have been writing melancholy elegies,
what
all
election?
the time. Right. Yes. God, Ron Medway's here. I missed you by that much at Pike's Place Market. I can't believe that you were in Seattle and we were in Seattle, and then we're in Vegas and you're in Vegas. What are the odds of that? I know, except I didn't get to open for you. I totally would have opened for you.
Play the old shit.
I would have. I was prepared to stand behind you at Pike's Place Market and just say, play the old shit, and have you turn around. Alright. It was my... Alright, whatever. It was my first trip to Seattle. I did discover Orange Dracula, so that was a highlight for me. I know. It's the best store in the Western world. No, it's okay. I interrupted by acknowledging
I'm going to be in your band, Ron. It's so exciting.
Alright, isn't this about me?
Ostensibly.
What was the question? What was the question? Excuse me, Mr. Carter, what was the question?
Hey, Ron, give me a number between 1 and 12.
7.
Close enough. That's it. You rolled a 7. You rolled a 7. Nobody cares about that. Nobody really gets the dice.
I'll do this. This poem is entitled Dope and Baller. This is how it is to suddenly feel old. Hands removing the rings from your fingers before your corpse is cold. It began around the time that Tower Records closed, and now it's reached escape velocity. It's a quotidian atrocity. Worse than the grinding gears of penury, this being rooted in the 20th century. I never smoked weed, but only because I never smoked at all. A vow.
How much is your book here in Las Vegas?
You can purchase a copy of Walking Away from Explosions in Slow Motion, published by the Operating System, out of Brooklyn, New York, with the low book festival price of $10, so we don't have to make change.
I have an actual question, which is there a constellation of or other practicing poets that you feel you're sort of part of their constellation?
No, I'm so completely out of tune with whatever is happening in poetry that I'm amazed when anything. No, but that's just how it goes. I'm deeply invested in poets that are deeply suspect in our current era, like Frederick Seidel, who, if you don't know Frederick Seidel, he's this Baudelarian sort of poet who's a weird mashup of Robert Lowell and Lord Byron. He is not task of the dominant culture, which is now finally going away. Here's a poem about that. This poem is entitled White. Nothing could be easier. The privilege of silence. The fantasy of a world in winter, wrapped in blankets of blankness, paper that dissolves between your fingers, leaving them wet with the opposite of tears. One must have a mind of whiteout and have been wrong for a long, long, long time. Let others build a snowman. It's too cold. Every time I speak, I can see my breath, and so I shut up, like a house intent upon its hearth. I concentrate on spring, which is always only arriving, never quite here yet. I bring in more firewood. I sit, shivering still, by the window.
Do you think, Gregory,
Yes.
that poetry is more appealing to young people now because of hip-hop?
Here's the spiel. I'm going to fall into professor mode for a second. There will be a service fee. Poetry is displaced in culture by popular music. The impetus for lyric poetry, which of course began as songs, poetry accompanied to music, the place it had in our culture was usurped the moment you could record a 220-minute pop single or song, because then the power of music and words, which is always more powerful than literary poetry, became in the ascendant. So when hip-hop, when permutations came down in hip-hop, of course that's poetry. Of course Bob Dylan's poetry. There's nothing more irritating than when Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize and all these people went online like, oh, that's not, what are you, It's like, oh my God, wasn't this whole question settled like 40 years ago? This whole notion that there was high art and low art? I mean, wasn't that the whole point of postmodernism, to explode that? I think so. So this notion that, oh, that's not poetry, this is poetry, it's nonsense. It's all poetry. Rap is poetry, hip-hop is poetry, music, lyrics of your favorite band, it's all poetry. It's just poetry set to music. I have the widest possible definition of poetry. And so I think that's why it's popular, because a poem set to music is always going to be popular than just a poem. Not always, but 9 times out of 10, because of the power of electronic media. Remember, if the only reason we have literary culture at all is that the printing press had a 500-year jump on electronic media. If television and the printing press had been invented at the same time, we would not be sitting here at the Las Vegas Book Festival. We'd be at the Las Vegas YouTube Festival. We'd be at the Doug Javelin Short Video Festival, right? Video Jam. We'd be at Video Jam 2018, right? Lots of new short videos, as the flyer said. Electronic media, the spectacle, is infinitely powerful. So when compared to literary culture, and so any way anybody comes to poetry, I don't care how they do it. If you come to language and you come to a relationship with language that is invested in wonder and love and in speaking in ways that tell truth to power and tell reality to fantasy and more importantly tell the imagination to reality, then you are in good shape.
But do you not agree that Kendrick Lamar's Damn, which won the Pulitzer Prize, is not as good as To Pimp a Butterfly?
I've only listened to Damn, so I don't know.
Well, we read
Sorry.
the poem.
The sounds that animals are made to make in picture books. The sound of a bear talking in its sleep, of a rooster that only crows in dreams, and the caw of a crow that roosts in dreams, a crow that is neither black nor white, that's no color at all except for the color of its voice. The sound an old horse makes with just its eyes when you ask, why the long face? Or the dog you alternately kick and rescue. In that place your mind goes to when you think about how the world is full of other living things, how the world is positively lousy with living things. The sound that dog makes that frees and condemns in the same woof. The dog that barks in the distance, the mangy trope that signifies loneliness, all its illusion and promise, although sometimes it's only there to let you know that nothing is happening, so something can. Everyone hears that dog. No one's ever seen it. Everyone pictures a different dog, purebred perhaps, more likely a mutt, the blessed mutt that redeems with all its fuzziness, its dark eyes looking up as its nose falls to the earth like a shooting star. That dog's bark, desolate and safe, beyond howl or growl, a courtesy, like the sounds that humans are made to make, talking in our sleep, clearing our throats to say good morning to no one.
One element of your work that is downplayed, I think even you downplay it, is the humor. You've got funny bits in there.
Man, if you don't have funny bits in your poems, that's deadly.
Do you workshop? Do you bounce off of Lady Brilliant over there?
My brilliant girlfriend is laughing because apparently I am the world's worst workshop participant. Here, apparently, and all of my friends, poets in New York, who workshop each other's poems. This is what they say always happens when I come to the workshop. Gregory always comes in with a poem that's already perfect and finished, that needs no work in it whatsoever, and just shares it, and then when you all sort of sit around and say, I don't know what to say about this, it seems like a finished piece of work, he just leans back and goes, I know. He's like, and my friend Anthony says, you do realize the point of workshop is to work on things that need work, not for you to just be impressive. And I said, really? So yeah, I don't really workshop anything more. I lead workshops, I teach workshops. I teach a workshop for Brooklyn Poets, which is a fantastic organization. If you find yourself in New York, you should come to one of the Brooklyn Poets events done by the brilliant poet Jason Koo. A wonderful organization that I could finally join because I finally moved to Brooklyn. I teach workshops, but I am apparently a terrible workshop person. And that happened in grad school too. I bring a poem in and people would just make comments and I would just be like, well, you're all idiots. I mean, in my head, I wouldn't say that in a workshop. But yeah, I'm really, really, really bad. My process is if a poem isn't ready, I know it, and I don't show it to anybody until it's in some shape that I think it is.
Pardon my ignorance here. Does New York have a poet laureate?
Probably. Who's the poet laureate now?
Brooklyn is
Is she still the poet laureate? She's terrible.
Can we take her?
We could probably take her in a fight. Yeah. No, she's not. She's just very mediocre. Sorry, that just came out. We saw Tina Chang at the Brooklyn Book Festival, and we were like, "That's really? That's." Sometimes you have to be a hater.
I'm sure people approach you for advice on their approach. I approach you for advice on mine.
Yes.
What piece do you give
I
out?
still totally have to go over your draft.
Yeah, you do.
I'm so sorry. You said
It's okay. Stuff's
No, it's really. I'm sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Yes, what was the question? Yes.
What advice do you give most commonly?
For poems?
Yeah.
It depends on the level of the poet. It's pretty basic stuff. If you're going to use punctuation in a poem, be consistent. Don't use punctuation at all if you don't like punctuation. You'd be surprised by how many people are inconsistent in that choice early on. It's usually very technical matters. It's usually little things like, you would really improve this if you just use this word instead of that word. But again, I always couch it in terms of, I'm a massive fraud, and so anything I say should be taken with very large grains of salt. But if anything I say is helpful to you at all, then we are blessed.
Oh, that reminds me of something.
Yes.
Speaking of punctuation, you love the ampersand. You love it.
I do love the ampersand. And I've had editors of poetry journals go, we really like this poem, but can we change the ampersands to the word and in all these poems? And I was always like, no.
That was not a thing I remember.
That's John Berryman's fault.
Okay.
I went through a very bad period 15 years ago. And John Berryman's book, The Dream Songs, saved my life. And I wrote a book, an homage to it, about my own life, and Berryman used a lot of ampersands, and I kind of dug it. You know, I liked the way it looked. I just like ampersands. They're all just sort of twisted and dark like me. So. Yes, John Berryman was a terrible alcoholic who killed himself by jumping off a bridge outside of Minneapolis. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. All the wonderful things John Berryman did. Oh, but it's like, you know, there's this woman named Sylvia Plath. Apparently, she killed herself, but I guess she wrote some poems too. No,
Did you see the ampersand at the sculpture park? Did they make you that?
I did. In Seattle, yes, I did see the ampersand. I was like, oh, hey, it's a rotating ampersand.
The first piece of yours I remember that used it was your Western.
I hope she didn't buy a poetry one. The only one
Still scripts from Where You Shot Me, Scarce.
Oh, right, Prescott.
Is that in here?
No, that's used. Sorry.
That's right. I think I got it somewhere.
That actually was published by an online poetry journal called Freeze Ray, which only publishes poetry about popular culture, and they actually published that poem. So if you Google that, you can read that.
Oh, that's the device that you have with you at all times?
No, it's available online. It's called Prescott, Arizona, and it's in a poetry journal called Freeze Ray, which is a great online journal. I love journals that have a fun theme, as opposed to the theme of our journal is all the misery and suffering. So we don't want misery and suffering. You know,
that's right.
But it's like, oh yeah, popular culture, because that's nice and broad enough. Everybody, or nearly everybody, has something that touches on popular culture.
Quick questions here, and then we're going to have you read some more. What's the oldest piece in here, and what's the most recent?
The oldest piece. This is embarrassing. Kind of the first poem.
Really?
And the most recent piece is the last poem because I changed it. I'll read the last poem of the book at the end of our time together. Only 15 more minutes, folks. Thanks for hanging in there.
You've done so well.
Thank you.
Does anybody out there have a question before I read another piece?
Yes, Harry.
It's not really a question.
Yes.
Oh, his 13-word horror stories.
They're back at the hotel, Carrie. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for bringing them up. I thought I might have an opportunity to read them at a different venue, and then that didn't happen. Would you like a 13-word horror story just for you? Hey, throw me a rope! But a curtain of black tentacles descended instead. That was just for you. Fortunately, I can remember some of them. They will soon be animated on a YouTube channel. Yes, a friend of mine in New York, a photographer named Adam Courtney, and a friend of his, get me record several of them, and they're going to animate them and upload them on YouTube, in theory, sometime next week. We'll see when I get back to New York if they actually did that. But at some point, they will exist. You will not have to go back on my Twitter several years to find the 13 horror stories. You'll be able to see them animated. Yes. But thanks for asking for it. I'm glad you said Halloween and not... Nevada Day is coming up. Do you have any Nevada Day poems?
I know you do.
Apparently people are into this thing called Nevada Day, or whatever it is. As far as I'm concerned, it's Halloween. Yeah.
Quick show of hands. Who's heard his Odyssey haiku?
Odyssey haiku? Oh, you mean the epic haikus?
The epic haiku. I want to hear your epic haiku.
I don't know if I remember it. Jeff remembers it, so why don't you just read it? Why don't you just read it, Jeff?
I'm sure I'll screw it up. Odysseus left Troy.
Odysseus left Troy.
He wandered a long, long time. At last, he came home.
That's a deep cut. Deep cut.
It's funny. I can quote that, and I can quote David's bowling trophy piece, and that's it. That's all I know.
I know.
I don't even know you at all.
I can quote lots of David's poems from back in the day. I I still do. I still do the whole 10 books that if you find in your school library, you should call the librarian. Encyclopedia Brown in the case of beer. I still make that joke to people in New York. Green eggs and death. Where's Waldo's finger? He's so good. I still make those jokes in New York and I don't give you credit. So.
Let's roll, sir.
I should read this. It's Vegas. This is entitled "All the Pierced Tongues in Porn." The kind of success that isn't failure, but isn't really success. The sort of pleasure that is only money, hovering like a tiny drone outside the frame. The manner of speaking that ends on a question when all of the answers are plain. The way a room is really brought together by the memory of pain. The look in the eyes, and the eyes unseen, that marks a presence absent, an absence present. The pressure of a thought on the soft underside of a bland, recurring dream. The category mistake that is language, the taxonomy of release. The tiny hole that is filled with a pebble polished by a silent silver torrent of speech. Hey, that's pretty good.
That was pretty good. You should write a book. $10.
And Geoff will give you a wet willy. Optional.
Do you
Yes.
feel different now that you have a book? It's a dumb question. Answer it.
Well, I have to give a real answer to it. I feel different because my mother died 2 months ago. And all she wanted was for me to publish a real book, not a chapter book. Even though poetry chapters are perfectly okay, but then you have to explain to everyone outside of poetry that no, this is not some thing I just ran off at Kinko's. Kinko's isn't even existing anymore. I just said Kinko's. It's EJ's. So I dedicated this book to her and to my really girlfriend, and she died 2 months before it came out. So the feeling that I thought I would have, I am not having currently. Sorry, should I go back to being funny? Hey, it's Sean Jones.
Sean Jones is
Hi,
here.
Sean. Yeah, you don't have to explain. It's nice to see you.
Come on in.
Do you have another question, Geoff, or would you like to invite someone in the audience?
I would like to invite someone in the audience to ask a question.
Yes.
They will give you a chance.
No, I'm going to do that at the end. About 7 minutes. I never felt closer to Las Vegas in the 15 years since I lived here since that day. That's probably the best way I can explain that feeling. Vegas is always with me, as we were saying earlier, but there was no distance after that for a while. And I wrote that very quickly. Scott Dickensheets was kind enough to post it to Desert Companion, to their blog for NPR, KNPR. I always say NPR now because if in New York, if I say, oh, KNPR, people are like, what's the K part? Oh, right.
And in print.
Yes, and in print, and I guess it meant a lot to a lot of people who read it, which I should mention this to the advice. Every so often, you will write something that means something. Oh, I like how the wind blew that down, but it's something. And that really is what it's all about. So, yeah.
How quickly did it come together?
Oh, within hours. Same day. I wrote the same day it happened in the evening. So,
I feel like we should jump to something wacky.
as I mentioned in the notes in this book, for some reason, this manuscript had 3 poems that references REM. I don't know why. It wasn't like I was listening to a lot of REM the last couple of years, but somehow REM just bubbled up. Actually, you know what? I'll read, because Ron is here, and Ron will appreciate it. This is a form I invented. It's called the extended play. Those of you who are listening carefully will realize what the structure is. Extended play. The thing about time is that it's chronic. Better get out of sundown before town, before the dead light devours those wolves, the hours that hunt you higher, lower, than high and low can know. The gardening never ends. The pruning, though, where it's at, that's clipped from nowhere, and then it's night again. Stars unseen against the carnival of light bleed. What are you really made of, if not this stupid brick? Out of sorts, under the covers, the bed a black box for recording dreams. Trains of thought, the cars full of darkness. You could live 1,000,000. You won't. Time is stride. You a stumble. Jacob Briggs, anyone to guess what the structure of that was? You take an extended play that you like, and then you take the title and the names of all the songs, and then you make the names of the songs, the words of the names of the song, into the end words of every line of the poem. So that was first based on R.E.M.'s Chronic Time, 1982. Thank you. I'm old. I still love that EP. That's like the best things to. That's like my second favorite EP after Lexico's Convict Pool. I just do all the time. Anyway, did you have a question, Jeff?
Well, our time together is running short.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it just flew, didn't it?
All right, I'm going to read.
My last question.
Yes.
Before we
Yes.
what is next? Do you have another book in you?
Jesus, dude, I've got like 6 unpublished manuscripts. It's like the worst. Seriously.
I know the feeling.
You have no idea how much I've written and how this is finally. I went to grad school thinking like, oh yeah, I'll do my MFA and like within like 3 or 5 years I'll have a book out. Doesn't work that way. Yes, I have many manuscripts. One is currently being looked at by a different publisher. I may call it new and selected just to fuck with people. Because I took 3 other manuscripts and sort of, drew things from them. But yes, there's always more. There's always more where this came from. If you've enjoyed walking away from explosions in slow motion, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And are we done with the question portion?
We're done with the question portion. I would love to hear your...
You're not going to ask Pop-Tart or pie?
Pop-Tart.
What kind of pie?
Let's just read your fabulous work.
All right, I'll read a sad poem, and then I'll read a hopeful poem for Liz. Oh, it's hopeful, but it's also sad. Sorry. This poem is entitled, Gregory Crosby Marked Himself Safe During the Violent Incident in Las Vegas, Nevada. Easily done. I wasn't there, except I was. That morning, I awoke from a nightmare where I watched New York City burn beneath a boiling mushroom cloud, someone screaming nearby, but I couldn't see them. I was alone. I was watching the end alone, waiting for the shockwave, waiting to die alone with others, alone. I forced myself to wake before the shockwave hit, my love next to me, morning light at the edges of the room. In my hometown, strange city of my heart, a cloud awoke on the 32nd floor of Mandalay Bay. A black void in gold, a missing tooth in the face of the sun, a window that should never open, darkness behind it, glinting. A line of fire. First the flash, then the wave after wave. Am I safe? Yes, I'm safe. Am I safe? No. No, I'm not safe at all. It never ends. Someone always screaming nearby, alone with others. It's automatic. There's no dream, nothing to wake from. We've been awake for a long time now. We have marked ourselves safe so that others can die. Did a cloud swallow the sun, or the sun swallow a cloud? A line of fire, a cloud burst. The shockwave passes, and we wait. We wait. Here's my last poem. Thanks everyone for not sleeping in. Very, very kind of you. Thank you for listening. Thanks to Geoff Carter, my brother, and my other mother. This last poem is called Under the Firehouse. Why do dead people go to cemeteries? This voice no more than 6 or 7, as the bus crawls through the slush past Greenwood's gate. The rare mother who speaks to her child as an equal, because people like to have a home then too. Grandma has a place in mind because it's pretty. Grandpa wants to have his ashes spread on the Chesapeake. Why there? Well, any water really. Why does Grandpa like water? Water gives him something. It feeds his soul. A long pause as the D train cries out metal on metal through the underpass. Above, we weave, slow to pick up, drop off. Then the small, serious voice declares, when I die, I want to be under the firehouse. And the mother does not blanch as her son in blue-green parka, pale face turned to the winter light, eyes impossibly bright, contemplates his mortality. That sounds lovely, she replies. Whatever cracks allow heartbreak to seep into our lives seem suddenly sealed tight, as a disembodied voice reminds us to please use the rear door to exit. But mother and child get off at the front, holding hands, a glimpse of them in the cold before the bus speeds up and overtakes them. Thanks.
Thanks to everyone for coming out. Thanks to the Book Festival for having us. Gregory Crosby, ladies and gentlemen.